Before we get started, I want to mention that the meeting is being recorded. So if you are on the call, you are consenting to the meeting being recorded. At the end of the presentation, we will turn off the recording so that if anyone has any questions, you can ask them off the recording. And then we will post the recording to our website so that it can be viewed later if needed. While people are trickling in, I am going to give a quick overview of CUAHSI. If you are not familiar with us, CUAHSI is the Consortium of Universities for the Advancement of Hydrologic Science Incorporated. We are a diverse and dynamic water science community made up of over 130 member organizations and hundreds of participants from around the world. We are primarily funded by the National Science Foundation, and our mission is to advance water science by strengthening interdisciplinary collaboration, providing cyber infrastructure, and promoting water science education. We do this by providing a number of programs and resources to the water science community. So one way that we support the community is by providing resources for publishing, accessing, and analyzing water data. We have 2 data repositories that we support where you can either publish your own data or find data that's been published by others. We also have tools that are available to do some computing in the cloud, like Jupyter Hub and MATLAB. We also have a number of education and outreach programs that we provide to help train the next generation of water scientists. So that includes things like hands-on trainings. We host a snow measurement field school. We host a summer institute with the National Water Center. We have cyber seminar, webinar lectures throughout the year. We have a virtual university. We have community meetings and more. We have a lot of things going on. And so if you are new to CUAHSI, just learning about CUAHSI, I encourage you to take a look at our website, sign up for our e-newsletter at this link, or reach out to me directly to learn more, because we have a lot of great things going on. And so with that, I am going to turn things over to John Gerke, who is a professor in the Department of Geology, Mining, and Engineering at Michigan Tech, to talk about the IRES El Salvador program. So one moment, I'm trying to multitask and stop sharing my screen. There we go. Perfect.
All right. Well, thanks, Emily.
Yes.
And I want to thank everyone for coming today. This presentation or this meeting is more of a discussion. There is a few slides with notes of things I want to make sure I describe for all of you. But I just want to remind you that there's a recorded webinar from last year. So the activities that are planned for this coming summer were originally planned for summer 2020, but the COVID disrupted that. So what we are doing is just shifting all those activities that we had planned for 2020 and we're going to conduct them in 2021 with some adjustments, and for the continuation or the ending, hopefully, of this COVID pandemic. But then also today we're going to talk about some of the contingency planning we've been doing to anticipate adjustments that we might need to do if vaccination and things doesn't happen as fast as we hope. This is very different than last year, where last year we were all ready to go and had a cohort of people selected and we're starting the planning activities, but all the mystery and uncertainty about the pandemic, there wasn't any time to develop contingency plans. So in this, what I did is I took the presentation from our webinar introducing the project a year ago and adjusted it for this summer 2020. And I'm not showing all the slides, just the ones that are sort of relevant to the schedule. So the objectives today are then to discuss the contingency planning for the COVID disruption. So I have there a picture of what the COVID virus looks like in El Salvador, uh, and then a picture of one of the sites that we're going to work at this summer. And of course, that really wasn't a virus. It's a fruit that is ripe in July, so we hope to be able to get some this coming summer. I just wanted to mention a little bit about our planning, our contingency planning. You know, we have a variety of policies and protocols we have to abide by. So, you know, we have university ones, we have travel criteria, and so I just did a screenshot today of what the outlook is for El Salvador. So right now the requirements from the CDC and the recommendations are provided here, and we'll continue to monitor those, and you can yourselves as we approach the summertime. You know, we have criteria for eligibility of participation, and those are in alignment with what the National Science Foundation had for criteria of participants for these kinds of projects. And then we are envisioning some additional things for this coming summer just related to the pandemic. And so these are outlined here. And these are sort of worst case scenarios, I think, are the most stringent that we can imagine. So for example, we are anticipating that everyone's going to have to be vaccinated to participate in this. And that those vaccinations, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty about the timing of that. And of course, each of them require 2 doses. And depending on which one people get, that the timing between doses could be 3 weeks to a month. So it's the timing of these vaccinations that add a lot of uncertainty about when we might actually start or travel this coming summer. In addition, just the travel requirements of some airlines and to get through the border, we need to do viral tests 1 to 3 days prior to departures, and that is on both ends, leaving the United States to go to El Salvador, and then upon in advance of returning back to the United States. Everyone can assume that we're going to continue the masks and distancing practices that we've been all enjoying the past 10 months. There may be other protocols that we're going to need to implement depending on the human subjects research requirements in place at the time. So actually, one of the reasons we had to postpone the activities from last summer was that our university wouldn't let us conduct human subjects research during the COVID. And so we'll have to find out what those are going to be as we get closer to the summer, and the outlook of vaccinations and prevalence of COVID dictate what our university and guidance is. We're going to need a lot of flexibility regarding schedule, so I'm going to discuss some scenarios today, sort of provide some end members of what we are thinking. And some of those, the sort of the worst case scenario is going to require probably a little bit more online participation than we had anticipated initially. And that online participation could be both before our event. Certainly there'll be online participation before our trip, and then potentially some after if we have to push the experience to the latter 2/3 of the summer. I'm just reminding everyone that in addition, we have a plan for quarantining in El Salvador when we arrive, and we use that time for our training and our preparations for the field work. But there's also going to be probably a requirement of a quarantine when you return back to your home institutions, and that'll probably be around 10 days to 2 weeks. And so I'm mentioning that so that that can be factored in. So a lot of these of the slides I excerpted, I just replaced 2020 with 2021. So the activities are going to be the same as we planned out for last summer. And so just a reminder of some of the highlights of the project. So this is more from that webinar that's on, the recording of which is on the application website. The new thing that I wanted spend most of the time discussing with you and our colleagues here are the schedule scenarios and contingency planning. That's the primary purpose of tonight. So this table here is the ideal schedule. So this is adapted from the 2020 schedule to what we think would be 2021 under ideal circumstances. So from a application standpoint, you know, the deadline's coming up, and we're going to notify those that are selected, and a few weeks after that, that notification will include some alternates, and so we need to have a list of those, because they're, especially this coming summer, because we anticipate there will be, you know, people that maybe can't get the vaccination or have to change their plans for COVID related reasons. We have plans for online activities in advance of our departure. Some of those are logistics, like the travel logistics, and others are research preparation activities and orientation, of course, to the places that we're going to. We are hoping, under ideal circumstances, arriving in El Salvador on June 14th and beginning our orientation, our boot camp, or 2-week boot camp, which also will be sort of our quarantine at the same time. And that'll be in San Vicente, El Salvador. Activities at the University of San Vicente and the FMP, and then at the hotel, that complex that we're going to stay at. And we'll work on those, work on our field training for field work and the skills associated with that. And then the research work would start after that training in the two communities that we plan to work in, and that'll be approximately 5 weeks of activities. And then we would return to San Vicente to wrap things up, put things together, describe what we found in our experiences with each other and our collaborators. And then everybody hopefully could return home then right after that on August 6th. So this is ideal. This is the 2020 schedule adapted for 2021 without really thinking too much about COVID, other than, you know, this 2-week boot camp. That it's also likely we're going to be delayed, primarily due to the rollout of the vaccinations. And so this schedule here is an adjustment to the ideal for up to a 2-week delayed start. And so I'm calling it the 2-week delayed start scenario. So the preparations online will be the same, but this schedule starts whenever we arrive, and that would be somewhere up until June 30th before we have to adjust the duration of the activity. Again, it'll include a training in San Vicente, and we're anticipating that training to have to be 2 weeks, because we anticipate we'll have to quarantine for somewhere around that amount of time. And then we can still accomplish the same duration of field work under this scenario, 5 weeks, but it's going to end later in the summer. And we'll still do a roughly a 4-day wrap up in San Vicente at the end. And then this time returning home, instead of earlier in August, it would be more just after the middle of August. This scenario is sort of like the worst case we're anticipating. So this would be if the delay is greater than 2 weeks. So we're envisioning that we really need to get all of you back in time for fall semester. And so for most of you, that would be somewhere around August 20th for an August 24th start. And so using that as sort of the end date, and then examining how we might adjust the schedule in front of that. So this would be a schedule where we're not able to leave for El Salvador until July. And then when we get there, we will still do our boot camp and the quarantine phase aspect, that training. And then depending on how much time we have from the end of the boot camp to when we return, those will be the weeks that we work in the communities conducting research. The biggest change to this is probably that instead of having the wrap up in San Vicente, we'll probably have the wrap up afterwards and do it virtually after we return. So that way we can maximize the time that we designate field work. And that's all subject to adjustment, and we'll see how things go. But this is sort of like the worst case constrained schedule. So just a reminder where we're going. So in the lower left here is the airport, International Airport, where we will arrive. And then from there, we'll spend our 2 weeks in San Vicente, which is northeast of the airport and east of San Salvador. And then our field work is going to be occurring in the communities of California and CUAHSI. And then we are anticipating staying in the community of Alegria. And that's where the headquarters for Lutheran World Relief are. So in terms of scale, in terms of driving time, all of those blue lines collectively are about 4 hours drive. So it's too far to drive, let's say, from where we start in San Vicente on a daily basis, but all of those transportation times are reasonable for from airport to boot camp to field site, and then daily on the field site to our communities. There's other contingencies we still need to consider that we haven't worked out. I've just listed a few of them here that I could think of. Contingencies for a positive COVID test despite vaccination. If some of us develop COVID-like illnesses during the quarantine part of our work, the boot camp or the field work, figuring out additional testing, logistics to maybe, someone might have to go home early. And then also we have to plan transportation and living logistics with thinking ahead to the possibility that some of us might get sick during the work. So having some plans in place to be able to move people to either to go home in a serious case or more isolation during the research work because of an illness. So I wanted to mention the team this is showing the overall team. The yellow boxes, solid yellow lines outline the people that are certainly going to be working with all of the participants this coming summer. Other people are designated for subsequent summers. The people in the Michigan Technological University in the yellow box are all here tonight, and I'm gonna have them introduce themselves here. I saw that my colleague and the new dean of the University of El Salvador, FMP, is here, Freddy Cruz. Emily is here, of course. You saw her at the beginning. We're anticipating her participation this summer, but I haven't really confirmed that with her yet. But anyways, this is some of the people that we anticipate working with this summer. The scientists at MARN, the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, are more likely to get involved in summer 2022 work. But the participants this summer are likely to meet them. So we're gonna, before I open up to questions, let you guys think about questions. When you can ask a question either by unmuting yourself or typing it into the chat. We're going to record these first ones because I imagine there are other people that are going to watch the recording that want to know the answers to the questions. But if any of you have a very individualized question, you're sort of shy to ask it, that'll be the part where after we shut off the recording, and we'll meet with some of you one-on-one and break out if need be. So with that, I'd like to introduce, first of all, my colleague Luke Bowman, Dr. Luke Bowman, who was sort of the organizer of all this, and many of you have been communicating with him. So Luke, do you want to talk a bit?
Yeah, thanks, John. Really happy everyone's here. I'm excited about the prospects of picking up where we left off a year ago before the pandemic, and the real possibility of getting a cohort down to El Salvador this summer. I'm happy that Carrie and Angie are here. They'll talk next about some of our research initiatives for this first cohort. So just as a reminder, we're planning on replicating this trip to El Salvador for the next 3 years. And so we hope that each summer's cohort will make discoveries and explorations that will help inform subsequent cohorts. And so we have fairly well-defined objectives for this coming summer. And that's why you guys are here to learn about. And I've looked at some of your, I've been in touch with many of you over the last several weeks about whether you are suited for this cohort or a subsequent cohort. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but we also have a collaborator with us from the University of El Salvador, Jose Freddy Cruz. Just to give you an idea, I worked closely with John and Carrie Henquinet on both my master's and my PhD work in El Salvador. And so many of our in-country partners, collaborators, are people that Michigan Tech and our team has worked with for almost a decade. So we have Freddy here, Jose Freddy Cruz, with us to answer any questions as well. If you have concerns or questions about what the environment is like, where we're going to be working this summer. So I'm happy to be here, and I will introduce Carrie, and yeah, we're excited to have you all here.
Thank you, Luke. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Henquinet, and I am a cultural anthropologist on the faculty at Michigan Tech. I have been there now 14 years. It's hard to believe, but it's true. And as Luke mentioned, I worked with him, with John, with lots of different colleagues, and some of that collaboration, a lot of that collaboration was originally through our Peace Corps Masters International Program, which I have been working with for about a decade. And sadly is sunsetting now as Peace Corps has kind of shifted to doing some other kinds of collaborations. But it's been a really rich experience for the faculty and the students. And I've enjoyed over the last decade or so working with probably 50 plus students on their graduate committees doing research in Peace Corps countries around the world, including El Salvador and other Central American countries, but also all over the place. And it's been one of the most satisfying parts of my job working with students. So I'm very excited in that spirit to keep that up and work with some of you this summer in the field school in El Salvador, and also to continue moving in that direction and learning more about that particular area of the world. My training is as an Africanist. A lot of my ethnographic research is in Niger, but some interesting comparative issues with drought and agriculture and water, climate change, and I've always looked at the kind of cultural aspects of those issues and international development and humanitarian organizations. I've also done some historical work on humanitarian organizations. So lots of exciting things that we're going to learn this summer, and I'm really looking forward to working with Professor Cruz more directly and other colleagues who are down in El Salvador. So I think that to give you a little bit idea of where I come from. And I think, this summer, a lot of the work that we'll focus on will be centered on people's rural livelihoods and social vulnerability, and how water resources, climate change, agriculture all kind of come together around those issues. So I'm going to pass it on, I think, here to Dr. Carter, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Angie Carter, she, her, hers, and I'm a rural sociologist from Iowa originally and have done a lot of research with community-based organizations and sustainable ag and food systems in the Midwest. And I'm really looking forward to studying some of these questions in El Salvador with all of you. The work that we'll be doing this summer will be really important because it'll be building these community connections and learning more about community needs to set the foundation for subsequent summers and research. And so my community-based research experience, I think, will be really helpful for our team. Really excited to be working with everyone this summer. Like Carrie, I've done a lot of methodological research, qualitative research, community-based research. My focus has been on food and gender in sustainable agriculture. I've done research in Iowa and in the Upper Peninsula, and yeah, looking forward to doing these questions, working on these questions with all of you this summer. What else can I share about me? Prior to going back to graduate school for a PhD in sociology and sustainable ag, I worked as an international advisor and study abroad coordinator for UT Austin for about 6 or 7 years. So I have some international program experience under my hat, even if it's not maybe research experience. So looking forward to doing more international work again on that front. And yeah, I think if you have questions, I'm glad to answer them either on this webinar or if you want to email me after. You should all have probably our contact information, and really look forward to connecting with you more.
Well, thanks, Angie. This is John Gerke again. I forgot I didn't really introduce myself. I'm a professor of geological and environmental engineering, so my background's in water. So the people that you just heard from have that expertise for this coming summer, and my expertise is more for a summer down the road. But I'll be there this summer. I know a lot about El Salvador, and I know how to drive there, so I'm going to be participating in a lot of the logistical aspects for this year's cohort. Okay, so we're going to open it up to questions, and maybe we should at least allow our colleague, Dr. Cruz, to introduce himself. So Dr. Cruz, could you unmute yourself and just say a few words and in your native language, please?
Freddy, ¿estás ahí?
Hola.
Hola.
Sí, aquí estoy, Lucas y compañeros. ¿Me escuchan?
Sí, te escuchamos. No te vemos, pero te escuchamos.
Ah, ok.
Ahora sí.
Ok. Un saludo a todos y a todas. John, me da mucho gusto volvernos a ver. Lucas, igual, Billy. Y no sé si hay alguien más conocido, pero la verdad es que me da mucho gusto que reanudemos el proyecto y contento de que este año sí puedan venir a El Salvador. Y cualquier cosa, cualquier pregunta que consideren, ustedes me dicen. Aquí estamos ya dispuestos a esperarlos, a coordinar lo que haya que trabajar. Y de verdad que me da mucho gusto.
Gracias, Freddy.
Bueno.
So Freddy was just expressing how happy he is to see Emily and John. We did a pre-departure, pre-IRES visit in 2019. And I worked in Freddy's office for a couple of years during my PhD. He's the dean of the Agricultural Sciences Department at the University of El Salvador in the campus in San Vicente. So the volcano behind me is San Vicente volcano, and that's where we're going to do our 2-week quarantine boot camp and collaborate with faculty at the university and their students to develop the field methods and approaches that we are going to use in our 2 target communities. So Freddy has visited Michigan Tech and been an integral part of our relationship with projects in El Salvador. So we're happy to have him here. Gracias, Freddy, por el apoyo y la presencia.
Okay.
Okay, so this is where we have an awkward Zoom silence before anyone asks a question. So feel free to break that awkwardness with a question. So we have one in the chat. It says, I know it's impossible to say for sure, but when do you anticipate making the decision to push back the start date? Yeah, so that's going to evolve naturally. We, like last summer we did, or last spring, we kept our options open for going as long as we possibly could. And then when the writing was on the wall, then we canceled. Okay, but this summer we're gonna go, and short of a complete failure in the vaccination program, and so we're just going to keep adjusting the plan based on how we learn about people getting vaccinated, and then also our monitoring of the pandemic circumstances in El Salvador and here in the United States. In fact, in El Salvador, it's probably been less prevalent, and so really here in the United States it's been worse, and so the conditions here are probably going to dictate when we go, more so than the conditions there.
Yeah, I will just add, John, I just dropped a link into the chat for the program webpage. Has additional information about additional program details. It has the kind of ideal schedule that you presented, and also has application instructions and the link to the program application. So if this is kind of your first time learning about the IRES program in more detail, I would encourage you to check out that page, and also check out the webinar from last year as well.
I'd like to add to what Emily had mentioned at the start when she was describing the data sharing capabilities that CUAHSI fosters. We will be learning some of that during that boot camp, and so that the information, the data that's collected this summer, will be put into one of those systems right away, and that data can be shared. And there hasn't been much. That system has not been used outside of the United States as much as it could be, and so this group will be sort of demonstrating how the value of that and how it can be done in an international activity.
Other questions for us or Freddy in El Salvador? We can translate. I just want to point out that we do not have a representative from our counterparts at Lutheran World Relief. They were not able to attend, but they're a part of our project, and they were instrumental during our pre-visit to identify the communities and sort of the objectives of our summer 2021 work. So even though they are not here, we're happy to answer questions about the focus of the work in the two communities coming up this summer.
Luke, maybe you can talk a little bit more about Lutheran World Relief and their involvement or collaboration. They're part of the collaboration.
Sure. So the organization Lutheran World Relief, it probably makes you think of a faith-based oriented group, but this organization has decades of experience working on development projects in El Salvador, and their development projects are not tied to any faith-based activities. So there's not a component. And I received a couple of questions from some of you that are participating in this meeting, whether that was the case. And it's not. They have a really strong reputation for a reputable and impactful development organization in El Salvador. And so our two collaborators there to the right, Francisco and Nelson, they helped us. Obviously, our primary concern for our participants in this endeavor is the safety and security while we are working in rural communities in El Salvador. So this team, we are using them as bridge people to connect with communities that will welcome the research activities that we are planning to conduct in summer 2021. So out of the 50 municipalities in which they work, we have identified 2. Actually, this guy Hugo, I've known him since 2009, and he's now running for mayor of one of the communities that we're going to be working in. So but we have strong partnerships. The 2 years that I was in San Vicente with Professor Freddy Cruz, the work we were involved with disaster risk reduction at San Vicente volcano, that was another Lutheran World Relief sponsored project that was financed by USAID. So they're a key partner for us, and helped us really determine which communities were going to be the best sites in which to work. And so for the 2 communities, they've already invested in 2 water related projects. And so one of the aims of this summer is to do a community assessment of the perception of community members, how those projects, those infrastructure projects have met communities' needs with water related issues. It was very long-winded, but I know Freddie could give us a better description.
No, that was good, Luke, because that inspired a question just to shut you up. So there was a question about, what is like a day-to-day activity. So that's going to be different. That during the boot camp, we're going to stay in a hotel complex, and so there's rooms and a common place to eat, and then we will work on training activities, probably both at the hotel and in some of their conference center rooms, and then also at the university that Freddie is dean of the agriculture school there, and that's just a short walk, a few blocks from the hotel. And then we're envisioning as part of that some practice field work in a community that is adjacent to San Vicente, but outside the area where we're doing our official research. But it was sort of like a hands-on practice of the skills that are being taught or shared in the boot camp workshops. And then when we go to the field site for those 4 or 5 weeks, we'll be staying together in Alegria and then traveling daily to the 2 communities. That's our current thinking, and so those trips and that work is going to be very ethnographic focused, and communication with community members to characterize and identify community needs in regards to adaptations to the experiences they're feeling from climate change. And so those days are going to be quite varied. There'll be many days where it's a lot of talking and interviewing, and other days where that information is being put together and questions are for the next day, or other groups are going to be developed. And then at the end, that under the ideal schedule where we have a wrap up, that'll be back in San Vicente, where we can present our work, synthesize it, present our work to each other, and then get ready to return back.
Then there's another question, John, in the chat. Could you describe this criteria, eligibility criteria, for interdisciplinary students with social science backgrounds?
Okay, well, I think I would like to defer the answer to that to Angie and Carrie. Maybe Angie, you could go first for a few minutes, and then Carrie, and describe it in the context of your own expertise.
Yeah, I think that when we were reviewing applications last year, we were open to students who had had human dimensions experience, say with maybe you're coming from biological, physical science background, but you've worked on projects involving, human dimensions of conservation or agriculture or water. Students that had had some experience with thinking about social and community sorts of questions. So you don't need to have had formal training, maybe with a sociology degree or something, or an anthropology degree. But of course, we need some people on our team who do, some folks who have some expertise already in doing interviews and focus groups or more community sort of oriented research. Maybe you've had some classes in this, maybe you did some research experience incorporating this. So I think we're interpreting experience pretty broadly.
Carrie, can you add from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the only thing, I would add there is just we are thinking about a 2-week boot camp when we get there. And before that, probably, a series of webinars that will have a little bit of reading and, some things that you can learn. But it's not enough time to get a full kind of perspective on social science research. So we want people who have a little bit of background, as Angie said. It doesn't mean you majored in it necessarily, but maybe a few courses, some kind of an experience where you've been exposed to the kinds of questions that social scientists would ask, and also a little bit the type of methods that they might use. And we definitely view this as a learning experience. So you can come into it, with a little bit of that background, but wanting to grow in that way. But people who have zero background, I think, are going to really have a hard time trying to do this work very quickly without having a little bit of an idea of what you're getting into. So that was our thinking. But like Angie said, we were considering a range of factors. And so some people had more expertise in this area, others a little bit less, but had other strengths that they were bringing to the team.
So I pulled up this picture again, in part because it reminds me both of the kinds of expertise and the kinds of activities that are going to be conducted this summer. So here on the left of the picture is Luke Bowman and Freddy Cruz, who you heard from earlier. Emily's in the picture, and then the gentleman to the right, and that crowd sort of wraps around the picture all the way to me, and I'm the one taking the picture. And so those were primarily farmers from areas as far as a 2-hour bus ride away from San Vicente that were invited to come and just tell us what they're experiencing with especially water issues related to climate change and their agricultural activities. And so we didn't prepare a lot of questions, but in the course of the discussions, we sure developed a lot of them. And then those with the answers and discussion that we were hearing is getting transcribed on that laptop that you see there in the lower left of the photo. And so we had a really great system that worked out. The person that's doing the transcription is also fluent in Spanish, so she was able to translate it in real time as she typed it up. And then you can see those of us that are like myself, who's very weak in Spanish, would be on our computers, and we would be getting translating by reading what that person was transcribing for us. So that's an example of some of the social science activities that we will be conducting, and how we might do that, especially in a group setting, that includes both fluent and non-native speakers.
I have a question. My name's Haley Smith. If we were to go, if we were accepted and were to go in this summer, I understand through your grant that you can't have an international experience, so that would make it ineligible to go for a second year. But would there be a potential opportunity to follow up and continue with the research? Particularly, like, I'm a PhD student, so I'm thinking about there is an opportunity to collect further data and to stick with the project.
Well, I'm really glad you asked that. And so having an international experience does not preclude one from participating. What we are doing is we're fostering or prioritizing applicants that have not had an international research experience.
I understand that. I'm sorry.
Okay, so that's all right. I'm glad you brought it up, because I wanted to be able to clarify that. What NSF and we would really like is for this experience this summer to inform the research the participants are performing in their graduate studies. And so we don't want them to necessarily change their whole research idea to the work that they might do this summer, but we would like it if it somehow informed what they're going to do and have a positive impact on their course of study and their professional development and research work after the experience. And we'll be tracking some of that. Okay. In terms of follow-up, one of the things we're really excited about by collaborating with Freddy and his students is that we're hopeful that his students will continue to conduct some of the work or build their own research projects that complement what we're doing, what our participants are doing during those times between summers, and that we will be going back and reestablishing those collaborations summer to summer, but with different participants. But yourself, if you participate this summer and you want to continue work there in subsequent summers, we will work with you in the off time, next academic year, to help try and figure out a way to get funding to support that work.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's encouraging.
Okay, well, I imagine people are zoomed out. I know I am. I had a long Zoom day today, and a year ago we hardly spent an hour a day on Zoom, but now it's more like an hour a day actually not on Zoom. I think what we'll do now is we'll turn off the recording, and if some people want to hang out and ask some questions that they feel like others aren't going to, it's just too specialized to their circumstances, we'll do that, and we can actually establish little breakout rooms where it can be one-on-one with particular members of our team. Okay, thanks everyone.